piece of paper that means something to you, you know, but what I mean when I'm saying what I'm saying and what you understand me to mean are not the same thing, and it's the same with written language. So when you understand that, and especially when you get into less direct forms of communication like music and like poetry, where you know, people are actually using more metaphorical terms and not speaking literally, you know. And there's, you know, it's not just in those two that people speak metaphorically or aren't direct about their actual meaning and intent. So in general, it's really important to study language and study the way that it's used and the way it's developed, and to know what words mean, you know. And so I want to read from my notes a little here. When we come across words which we do not know, or are researching fields with specialized terminology, we want to find both the meaning and consider the etymology and other ways to use this word. And you find that a lot, like in fields of science, where they'll take a word that means something completely different in normal, you know, common speech, and they'll apply it to a certain situation, and it'll have a very specific meaning, very, very specialized little language. And I mean, you know, clearly all of you do not have time to learn Latin, and I'm not saying I know Latin, but I mean, nearly all of our language comes from Latin, Sanskrit, or you know, Norwegian, the Norse language groups. You know, as far as European languages, they pretty much all either come from Latin, Sanskrit, or Norse. I mean, there's definitely some that come from, you know, groups within Europe. But I mean, that's most of. So if you're speaking English, speaking in terms of English, you know, that's what you're looking at. You know, it may be a French word, or it may be a Welsh word, or it may be a Germanic word, or, you know, all places in between. But most of those languages all came from either Latin, Sanskrit, or Norse. You know, or some combination even sometimes. Language is a very interesting thing. It's very diverse and kind of counterintuitive. You know, sometimes it's very obvious, you know, where a word comes from, but there's a lot of cross insemination with language and meaning, and it really pays to study and to know what a word means, what the specific use of a word means. Yeah, I smoke tobacco out of a pipe, so I'm going to do that a little bit. Yeah. So, let me check my notes here for etymology. Yeah, I wanted to finish this part. So, considering etymology and meaning and other uses for words are a good idea, even for words with which we are familiar, because new insights can be gained from the subtle nuances of language in nearly every case. And even this is true when the value of that insight isn't immediately clear. Sometimes if you really get into studying language, you'll find out the meaning of a word or its roots or whatever, and just be like, well, that's nice. I don't see how that helped me at all. But then later on, you'll be reading something or you'll be studying some other field, researching something, and that word will come up, and you'll be like, wow, well, I know all about this already, so cool, bonus points, and you'll be able to really understand the meaning, and especially in terms of detecting misinformation and disinformation. If you really know what that word means, then you know the nuance of it, and you can't really be fooled by certain uses of it, which you see a lot. That's a big part of political spin is using words which seem to mean one thing but actually mean another. But a lot of times, within spin, there's a reliance on people not knowing what words actually mean, and there's again countless examples I could get into of that, but it's just it pays off in so many ways. I mean, just in terms of like straightforward ways of your job that you're working right now, or your communication with the people that you love, your children, your spouse, your partner, your whatever you have going on in your life, learning to communicate and understanding how language works and what the actual meaning that someone is making sounds at you, or scrawling letters at you, or whatever, then actually understanding that there's just innumerable ways which studying language helps a person. So yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna say about that for now. Let me see here. Let me look at the curriculum. Alright, I have objectivity and subjectivity as headings under grammar. They're really more, that whole consideration is really more part of logic. I think I kind of put them in grammar as sort of a beginning consideration of the logic phase. That, as I was saying earlier, even though in terms of studying grammar, they're two separate, in terms of studying grammar and logic, they're two separate things, two different phases of this process, but lots of cross-feeding, lots of feedback loops, lots of referencing back and forth between the two to really get a sense of accuracy and objectivity. So objectivity, objective facts, and you hear this all the time, and I have quite a bit of fun, as some of you may or may not have seen, talking with people who have just sort of been brainwashed into thinking that there is no objective facts. Nothing is objective. Everything we do is subjective, and it's pretty much, in my opinion, utter hogwash. It's mind trickery that has been put into people that you don't know reality. You don't know anything. You can't depend on yourself for anything. Not even your senses. Not even what you're seeing right now is real. Everything is fake. Just, close your eyes, go back to sleep. There's nothing to see here, folks, I think it's utter hogwash. Let's talk about objective fact. I'm sitting here talking to you right now, recording this. You're watching it. That's an objective fact. Right? So, I mean, you know, I do that on the internet where I'll be like, okay, well, here's an objective fact. I'm typing this right now, you know? And it drives people crazy being like, because they come up with all these subjective theories of what's actually happening, and it's like, no, no. This is the fact that I am sitting here talking right now, and that you are watching this whenever you're watching this, and you know, it's a fact that it's an objective fact that I am actually speaking right now into this camera and you are watching it. And you can have all kinds of subjective theories about that, about, you know, perception lag and bias and hallucination and, you know, all kinds of stuff. People get into all kinds of philosophical loops about what objectivity is, you know, and I mean, there's a lot to it. There's no doubting that, but it doesn't change objective fact. Your subjective theories about objective facts don't change them at all, ever, under any circumstances. That's what existence is what exists objectively. You can have all kinds of theories about that, about what the dynamic of it is in relationship with other things, and, you know, what the filters are between you and it that are preventing you from seeing it as it truly is. And, you know, some of that's right on. Some of that is very true and to be considered and taken seriously and thought about, you know, in terms of like prejudice. Especially, you know, we all have our prejudices. We all think that we're the good guy, that we're right, and everybody else is, you know, a little off, not quite as right on the money as we are, you know. Or you have the opposite, where everybody else is right on, and you're the deficient person without useful faculties and nothing to offer the world, you know. There's definitely that perspective too, and all sorts of ones in between. And, you know, we all have our biases and our prejudice that way, but none of that changes the objective fact that I'm sitting here talking to you right now. None of it. Not a thing. That's objectivity. Those are objective facts. So subjectivity would be theories about this. Maybe your theory about this is I'm a pod person from planet Zebulon, you know? Maybe your theory about this is I'm a robot, you know? Apparently quite an articulate, expressive one, but, you know, robot, cool. You're allowed to have whatever theory you want, but none of it changes this objective fact. So that's objectivity and subjectivity. That's a basic breakdown of it. There's certainly a lot more to discuss, you know, in certain terms, but that's basically the idea. So anyways, yeah, so the last topic at hand here is researching. How to do proper online research, as this one link says. And like I was saying earlier, you know, this link is really, I was noticing as I was reading through it again, quite full of the appeal to authority. That, you know, only if a site has proper grammar and if it's formatted correctly and there's, you know, a person has credentials after their name, should you take it seriously and all that. And, you know, that's something to consider, certainly. And I do, you know, I was a spelling bee champion as a kid. I can spell my ass off. And I definitely, you know, take that into consideration if somebody can't spell and use proper grammar when they speak or write. And if somebody hasn't taken the time to double check their spelling, especially on like their website, then that says something.